Millionaire hires a poor woman to pretend to be his fiancée, but he is surprised when she says, "Hello everyone." Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's story. Lucas Davis was known for his wealth and success. At 35, he had built his empire from the ground up, becoming one of the youngest and most influential tech moguls in the world. But with all his money and power, he was still haunted by one thing: his family's pressure for him to marry. His parents, always the traditionalists, wanted him to marry a woman of their choosing, someone from the right background, the right social circle. Lucas wasn't interested in love or marriage, at least not in the conventional sense. His business was his priority, and relationships were a distraction he simply couldn't afford. But his family? They would not stop until he agreed. After months of constant pestering, Lucas hatched a plan. He needed someone convincing enough to play the role of his fiancée, someone who could fool his parents and business associates. He didn't care about her background, her status, or her wealth. He just needed a woman who could play the part well. That's when he met Lily. She wasn't from money. In fact, she had barely enough to get by. Lily worked long hours as a waitress at a small cafe in the city, barely scraping together enough to cover her rent and bills. But she had a spark about her, a natural charm, a warmth that drew people in. When Lucas met her, it was clear she was exactly what he needed. He offered her the job: play the part of his fiancée, attend some events, and pretend to be in love with him for a few months. In exchange, he would pay her a significant amount of money, more than she could ever dream of earning in a year. Lily was hesitant at first. She had never been one to lie, especially not about something as serious as a relationship. But her financial struggles left her with few options. Her mother was sick, and her younger brother was about to start college. The money Lucas offered could change their lives, so she agreed. Lucas laid out the terms clearly. No love, no commitment, just pretend. And Lily? She could handle that. At least, she thought she could. What she didn't expect, though, was how quickly the line between acting and reality would blur. In the beginning, it was easy. They kept it professional, attending fancy parties and charity events together. Lucas was cool, collected, and distant. Lily did her best to play the part of the adoring fiancée, even though the role didn't come naturally to her. But as the days passed, something unexpected happened. She started to see a side of Lucas that no one else did. Behind the boardroom meetings and the cold exterior, there was a man who was just as lonely as she was. He had no family to turn to, no real friends. He spent his nights in a sterile penthouse, surrounded by luxury, but it all felt empty. Slowly, they started to talk more. Lily would share stories about her struggles, about her dreams of becoming an artist and opening her own studio one day. Lucas, in turn, began to open up about his fears, his fear of being alone forever, of never finding someone who loved him for who he truly was, not for his money or status. What started as a business arrangement began to feel more real. As the days passed, Lucas found himself looking forward to their time together, their conversations, their moments of laughter. He wasn't sure when it happened, but somewhere along the way, he started to care. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. But he couldn't admit it, not yet. He had hired her to pretend. And yet, every time she smiled at him, every time she listened to him, he couldn't help but feel something stir in his chest. The lines between business and emotion were beginning to blur, and Lucas realized he was no longer sure where the act ended and real feelings began. As for Lily, she never expected to start developing feelings for someone like him. But somewhere between the gala dinners and late-night talks, she began to see the man behind the billionaire. The man who had been hurt, the man who needed someone to care. And despite the facade, despite the contract they had signed, she found herself wondering, what if this wasn't just a game anymore? What if this wasn't just an arrangement? What if, in the end, they both found something they never thought they could have? But neither of them was ready to admit it yet. Not yet. The act had to continue, at least for now. The question remained. Would they be able to keep pretending forever, or would the truth eventually come crashing down on them both? Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Comment yes if you want the next part of this dramatic journey. It had been a few weeks since Lily had started her role as Lucas's fake fiancée. In the beginning, it was all about keeping up appearances, attending charity events, mingling with influential people, and posing for photos like any other power couple. Lucas kept his distance emotionally, and Lily stuck to the plan. She played the role of the adoring fiancée, but deep down, she still felt like an outsider in his world. It wasn't just the luxury of his penthouse or the elite circles he moved in. It was the walls he had built around himself. Lucas wasn't the type to open up, not even to her. She had never expected to be a part of his world, and yet, she couldn't ignore the growing sense of connection she felt every time she saw him. There was something in his eyes, something more than the confident businessman everyone knew him as. It was vulnerability. Lucas had his own set of fears, ones he rarely showed. And somehow, Lily had come to understand that. But as the days passed, she also started to notice the cracks in their arrangement. It wasn't just about the public appearances anymore. It was about the moments between the events, those quiet, stolen moments when their act wasn't so carefully crafted. One evening, as they sat in the back of a luxury car on their way to another gala, Lily found herself leaning against the window, gazing out at the city. The lights of New York City flickered past them, each one a reminder of the world Lucas had built and the one she had left behind. "You know," she began, breaking the silence, "I never thought I'd be here, in a car like this, on my way to some fancy event, pretending to be someone I'm not." Lucas glanced at her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, softly, almost as if to himself, he replied, "I never thought I'd be here, either. With anyone." His words hung in the air, and Lily couldn't help but feel the weight of them. They weren't just words of regret, they were words of honesty. There was something raw in his voice, something she hadn't heard before. She turned her head to look at him, meeting his eyes. For a brief moment, the walls between them seemed to crumble. They were two people, both caught in a situation neither had expected, yet both finding solace in each other's company. But just as quickly as the moment had come, it faded. Lucas cleared his throat and turned his attention back to the road. "We're almost there," he said, his voice returning to its usual, businesslike tone. Lily nodded, but inside, something had shifted. They had connected, even if only for a moment. As they arrived at the gala, the familiar routine kicked back in. They entered the grand venue, hand in hand, flashing their smiles for the cameras. But this time, Lily's smile felt different. It wasn't just for the cameras, it was for him. She didn't know when it had happened, but somewhere along the way, her feelings had begun to change. She wasn't just pretending anymore. She was starting to care. And Lucas? He couldn't deny it either. He had hired her for a simple job, pretend to be his fiancée. But somewhere in the midst of the fake kisses, the pretend love, and the endless charades, he had found something real. Something he hadn't been looking for. He had begun to care for her, in a way he never expected. And yet, the contract still stood. Their arrangement was clear, and neither of them was willing to risk the truth. But in that moment, as they stood side by side, both pretending for the world, they both knew something had changed. The lines between truth and lies had blurred, and neither of them was ready to admit it just yet. As the days passed, the line between what was real and what was part of their arrangement began to blur even further. The gala had been just another event, but something had shifted between Lucas and Lily. It wasn't just the way they spoke to each other or the way their hands found each other in the crowded room. It was the lingering glances, the small smiles shared in the quiet moments between conversations. And the more time they spent together, the more they both began to wonder, was this still an act? Or was something real growing between them? Lily tried to push the feelings aside. She had agreed to a business arrangement, not a love story. She was here to help Lucas with his family situation, to be his fake fiancé, and that was all. But every time she looked at him, every time he smiled at her like he actually meant it, her resolve began to weaken. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park after another business dinner, Lucas turned to her. "Lily," he began, his voice softer than usual. "Do you ever feel like this whole thing isn't what we thought it would be?" His words took her by surprise. She had been wondering the same thing, but never dared to say it out loud. Instead, she looked away, trying to hide the rush of emotions that flooded through her. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice betraying the uncertainty she felt. "I don't know," he replied, his gaze fixed on her. At first, it was just a contract, right? But lately, I don't know, it feels different. They stopped walking, and for a moment, everything around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, standing in the soft glow of the streetlights. Lily took a deep breath. Maybe it feels different because we've been pretending for so long that we don't know what's real anymore, she said, her voice quiet but steady. Lucas nodded slowly, his eyes searching hers. I didn't expect to feel this way, he confessed. I thought I could just pay someone to play the part and move on, but now, I don't know what to do. Lily felt her heart race. For the first time, it wasn't just about the money or the arrangement. It was about something deeper, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Lucas, she began, trying to keep her voice steady. We both agreed to this. It's a business deal, nothing more. We can't let emotions get in the way. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew she didn't believe them. She had already begun to feel something for him, and she could see in his eyes that he was struggling with the same thing. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low whisper. I don't want this to end, Lily. Not like this. But I don't know how to fix it. For a moment, they just stood there, the distance between them shrinking. But then, just as quickly, Lucas pulled back, his expression hardening. We can't let this become anything more, he said, almost to himself. We can't let it get complicated. Lily nodded, even though her heart told her something else. She had to stay focused. They had made an agreement, and that was all it was. But the more she tried to ignore it, the more she realized she couldn't. They had already crossed a line, and deep down, she knew they couldn't go back. The next day, Lucas called her into his office. She walked in, her nerves a little on edge. He was sitting behind his desk, looking as composed as always, but there was something in his eyes, something that wasn't there before. Lily, he said, his tone serious. I think it's time we reevaluate our arrangement. Lily froze. Had he figured it out? Was he going to end everything? Her heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. What do you mean? She asked. Lucas leaned forward, his hands clasped together. I think we need to be honest with each other, he said, his voice quiet but firm. This isn't just about the contract anymore. It's about us. And I think we need to talk about what comes next. The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Lily realized that this wasn't just a simple arrangement. It was something more, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what that meant. But one thing was clear. The truth had come out, and there was no turning back. The next few days passed in a blur. Lily couldn't shake the conversation she'd had with Lucas. They had both acknowledged the shift in their feelings, but neither knew how to navigate what was happening between them. The contract, their arrangement, still stood, and she knew they couldn't just throw it all away. But every time Lucas looked at her, something deep inside her told her that what they had wasn't just a simple contract anymore. It was real, and maybe that was the problem. Lucas had been distant ever since their conversation in the park. He was trying to focus on business, keeping his attention on the upcoming deal, and yet Lily could see the tension in him. She had expected him to pull away, but not like this. It felt as if he was deliberately putting up walls, as if afraid to let her in. But then, one evening, something changed. They were at another high-profile event, a gala in support of one of Lucas's business ventures. The ballroom was filled with the usual crowd of business partners, celebrities, and socialites. It was a world Lily was still trying to get used to, but tonight, she felt different. She wasn't just a hired fiancée anymore. She was someone who mattered. She could feel it in the way Lucas had looked at her as they entered the room together, his hand gently holding hers as they made their way past the photographers. The usual, calculated smile he wore in public seemed a little less forced this time. They mingled, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with other guests, but it was clear to Lily that Lucas wasn't his usual self. He kept glancing at her, his gaze lingering for a second too long, almost as if he was trying to say something, but couldn't find the words. It was then that she realized. He was struggling with the same emotions she was. When the speeches and toasts were over, and the crowd began to thin out, Lucas suggested they step outside for some fresh air. They found a quiet spot on the balcony, overlooking the city lights. The chill of the night air was a welcome relief from the stuffy ballroom. For a moment, neither of them spoke, just standing there, looking out at the skyline. Finally, Lucas broke the silence. Lily, I've been thinking, he began, his voice steady but soft. I know we agreed to keep it professional, but I can't help how I feel anymore. Her heart skipped a beat, but she remained calm, trying not to let her emotions get the best of her. "Lucas," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't let this get complicated. We both knew what this was from the start." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I know, but I can't pretend anymore. I don't want this to be just an act. I don't want to keep lying to myself about how I feel. I know this isn't what we planned, but I care about you, Lily, more than I ever expected." His words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, everything felt suspended in time. Lily's mind raced. She had never thought this would happen, never imagined that the lines between their fake relationship and something real would become so blurred. But here they were, standing on the balcony, both admitting that they had crossed a line they could never uncross. "I care about you, too," Lily finally said, her voice trembling slightly. It felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, admitting what she had been trying to hide for so long. Lucas reached for her hand, holding it gently. "Then why are we still pretending?" he asked, his voice low. Lily took a deep breath. "Because I don't know how to move forward from here," she admitted. "What happens next? What if it doesn't work out? What if this messes everything up?" Lucas squeezed her hand, looking into her eyes. "I'm willing to take that risk if you are. I can't go back to what we had before. I'm done pretending." His words were bold, and for the first time since this all began, Lily saw the vulnerability in his eyes. He was giving her an out, a chance to walk away if she wasn't ready for what came next. But she wasn't going anywhere. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She didn't want to leave him. Not now, not after everything they'd shared. "Okay," she said softly, her heart racing in her chest. "No more pretending. Let's see where this goes." And in that moment, standing on the balcony with the city lights twinkling beneath them, they both knew that their lives were about to change. They had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. The question was no longer whether or not they could make this work. The question was how far they were willing to go to make it real. The days following their conversation were a whirlwind. What had started as a simple arrangement, a contract to pretend, had turned into something far more complicated. Lily and Lucas had crossed a line, one neither of them had expected to cross. The air between them was charged now, filled with unspoken words and lingering glances. It wasn't just about the events anymore. It wasn't just about the cameras or the smiles. It was about something deeper, something neither of them could deny. But as they ventured into this new phase of their relationship, the reality of their situation loomed over them. They both had so much to lose. Lily wasn't sure how to handle what was happening between them. She had been upfront with herself from the start. This was a job, nothing more. She never imagined that she would start caring for Lucas. But now, she couldn't ignore the feelings that had taken root in her heart. Lucas, on the other hand, had been avoiding the truth for so long. He had kept his distance emotionally, focusing on his business, using the arrangement as a way to keep everything controlled. But that control was slipping. The more time he spent with Lily, the more he realized that he was falling for her. And he didn't know how to stop it. He had never expected this. He had hired her to pretend to be his fiancée. He had told himself that it would be simple, that he could keep his emotions in check. But now, with every passing day, it was becoming harder to maintain the distance. One evening, as they sat across from each other in his penthouse, Lucas broke the silence. "Lily, we need to talk," he said, his voice more serious than she had ever heard it. She looked up, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is it?" she asked, already dreading the conversation. Lucas hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I can't keep pretending, not anymore," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep pretending that this is just business." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She had known this was coming, but hearing him say it out loud made it real. "Lucas," she said softly, "we agreed to this. We made a deal." "I know," he replied, his eyes locked onto hers. "But I can't ignore what I feel for you. And I don't want to. I can't keep living in this fake reality, pretending that this is all just part of some contract. You're not just someone I hired anymore. You're more than that." The words hung in the air, heavy and vulnerable. Lily stared at him, her mind racing. She had known, deep down, that this would happen. But now that it was in the open, she wasn't sure what to do with it. "Lucas, she started, but her voice faltered. She didn't know how to respond. She had never expected this to happen, never thought she would find herself here, torn between the life she had built and the feelings that were growing for him. "I care about you too," she finally said, her voice quiet. "But we can't just throw everything away. We made an agreement, and we can't break it." Lucas's expression softened, and he took a step toward her. "I'm not asking you to throw everything away," he said, his voice gentle. "But I'm asking you to be real with me. I'm asking you to be with me, not because of some contract, but because you want to. Because I want to." Lily felt her heart flutter at his words. He was asking her to take a chance on them, to let go of the walls they had both built around themselves. It was a risk, a big one, but as she looked into his eyes, she knew that she was willing to take it. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No more pretending. We'll figure this out together." In that moment, everything changed. They had taken the first step towards something real, something beyond the contract, beyond the arrangement. But the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There were still so many questions, so many uncertainties. But for the first time, Lily felt hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. They were both taking a leap of faith, and neither of them knew what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, neither of them was afraid of what might come next. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. They had crossed the line into something real, but neither Lily nor Lucas knew exactly what that meant. The world they had been living in, the one of public appearances and carefully maintained facades, felt like a distant memory now. Now, it was just the two of them, trying to figure out what came next. They spent the following week in an uneasy silence, each unsure of how to take the next step. The contract was still in place, and neither of them had brought it up since that night on the balcony. Lily knew it was only a matter of time before they had to face the reality of their situation. She had started to feel something more for Lucas, something that went beyond the surface. But there were still so many barriers. His world, the one he had built with his wealth and status, was not her world. She couldn't help but feel like an outsider, no matter how much he cared for her. Meanwhile, Lucas was struggling with his own doubts. He had never imagined that something as simple as a contract could turn into something so complicated. He had hired Lily to be his fiancée, someone to help him avoid the pressure from his family. But now, with each passing day, he found himself falling deeper into something that scared him. He had been lonely for so long, and now, the one person he had come to care for was standing right in front of him, unsure of where to go next. They met at a quiet cafe in the city one afternoon. It had become their place, a sanctuary where they could be themselves, away from the eyes of the world. Lily was sitting at their usual table, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup, when Lucas walked in. His eyes immediately found hers, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was a comfort in the silence, a shared understanding that neither of them could fully explain. Lucas took a seat across from her, his expression serious. "Lily," he said, his voice low, "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us." She looked up at him, her heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, already fearing the conversation that was about to unfold. "I mean, I can't keep living in this limbo," he said, his words coming out in a rush. "We can't keep pretending that everything is okay when we both know it's not. I've been holding on to this idea of control for so long, but I can't do it anymore. I care about you. I don't want this to just be some arrangement. I want it to be real." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She had always known that this moment would come, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel real. "But what does that mean, Lucas?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I can't imagine going back to the way things were. I don't want to lose what we have." They sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of his words hanging between them. Lily felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief because she wasn't the only one feeling this way, but fear because the future seemed so uncertain. "I don't want to lose you either," she said quietly. "But I don't know if I can handle the pressure of your world. I'm not part of that life, Lucas. I don't belong there." Lucas reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "I don't want you to feel like you don't belong," he said, his voice earnest. "This is our life now, not just mine. I want you to be a part of it. I want you to feel like you belong, because you do. You belong with me." Her heart swelled at his words, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she wasn't alone. Like she wasn't just pretending. This was real. "I don't know what the future holds, Lucas," she said softly. "But I'm willing to take that risk with you. I want to see where this can go." Lucas smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Then let's start fresh. No more pretending. No more contracts. Just us. And in that moment, Lily knew that no matter what happened, they had made the right choice. They were ready to face whatever the future held, together. As they took their first steps into this new chapter of their relationship, neither Lily nor Lucas could have anticipated what lay ahead. Their decision to be honest with each other had changed everything, but the road forward was anything but simple. Despite their mutual feelings, there were still forces at play, both inside and outside of their relationship, that threatened to pull them apart. The first test came when Lucas's family, who had been the driving force behind the original contract, caught wind of the shift in his feelings. They had always seen Lily as nothing more than a pawn in their plans, someone who would play the part and then disappear. But now, with Lucas genuinely caring for her, they were having none of it. One evening, just days after their conversation, Lucas received a call from his mother, her voice cold and businesslike. "Lucas, we need to talk," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "It's time to fix this mess you've made. We're not pleased with the direction you're going." Lucas could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had known this moment would come, but he wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt. He had always been the perfect son, doing what was expected of him, playing the part of the dutiful heir to the family's fortune. But this time, he was different. He had changed, and so had his priorities. "I'm not going to let you control my life anymore," Lucas said firmly. "I love Lily, and she's not going anywhere. If you can't accept that, then maybe it's time we reevaluate our relationship." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. For a moment, it seemed like his mother might speak, but instead, the call ended with a sharp click. Lucas felt a surge of relief, but also a twinge of guilt. He knew the rift with his family was inevitable, but it didn't make it any easier to face. He turned to Lily later that evening, the weight of the conversation hanging over him. "They don't approve," he said quietly, sitting beside her on the couch. "They want me to end things with you, to go back to pretending." Lily's heart ached at the pain in his voice. She had never wanted to come between him and his family, but she also knew they could no longer live in the shadows of a contract. "Lucas, you don't have to choose between me and them," she said gently, her hand reaching out to take his. "You deserve to live your life on your own terms, without them dictating everything. I'll support whatever decision you make, but I'm not going to ask you to give up your family for me." Lucas looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude and love. "I know," he said softly, "but it's not just about them anymore. It's about us. I want to build a life with you, no matter what it takes." That night, as they held each other, Lucas realized that the stakes had never been higher. He had already lost so much by standing up to his family, but for the first time in his life, it felt like he was finally being true to himself. He wasn't going to let anyone dictate his happiness, not even the family who had always come first. The next day, Lucas made the call. It wasn't an easy one, but it was necessary. "Mom," he began, his voice steady but resolute. "I'm not going to let you control my life anymore. I'm choosing Lily. If you can't accept that, then I'll have to live with the consequences." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, but this time, Lucas didn't flinch. He knew he was doing the right thing. After what felt like an eternity, his mother spoke. "You've made your choice, Lucas. I just hope you don't regret it." The words stung, but Lucas didn't waver. "I won't regret it," he said firmly. "This is my life now." Hanging up the phone, Lucas turned to Lily, who had been listening quietly by his side. There was no more pretending, no more contracts. He had taken the first step toward building the life he wanted, one with her. And for the first time, he felt truly free. The weeks following Lucas's decision were filled with both relief and uncertainty. He had taken a stand, and while his relationship with his family remained strained, there was a sense of freedom that came with embracing his true feelings for Lily. The world they had built together, the one that was once filled with hidden smiles and quiet moments, was finally out in the open. They were no longer pretending for anyone. But the transition to a life without the constraints of the contract brought its own set of challenges. Lucas had grown up in a world where his every move was scrutinized by his family and business associates. Now, he was walking away from that world, at least in part, to build a future with Lily. The first test came when they had to attend a public event without the guise of the contract. It was an important gala for one of Lucas's major investments, and the pressure was on. He had warned Lily about the inevitable attention that would follow them. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and the thought of the cameras and whispers from the crowd made her nervous. "Don't worry," Lucas reassured her as they prepared for the evening. "We're in this together. No more masks, no more pretending." The moment they arrived at the gala, it felt different. There was no act to put on, no charade to maintain. They were simply Lucas and Lily, standing side by side. The eyes of the room were upon them, and while Lily felt her nerves starting to rise, she could sense the confidence Lucas had in her. He didn't treat her like a sideshow or a prop anymore. She was his partner. They made their way through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries with business contacts, but there was something different about the way they interacted now. When a reporter approached them, camera flashing, Lucas didn't hesitate to take her hand in his smile warm and genuine. The questions came, but this time, there was no scripted response. "So, tell us, Lucas," the reporter asked with a smile. "What's next for you and your beautiful fiancée?" Lily braced herself, expecting the usual polite answer, the one where they would talk about the future without revealing too much. But Lucas surprised her. "We're not just playing a part anymore," he said, his voice steady and filled with sincerity. "This is real. Lily is more than just my fiancée. She's the person I want to spend my life with." The room went silent for a moment, and Lily felt her heart skip a beat. She had never heard him speak like this before, not in front of the cameras. This wasn't just for show. He was claiming her, not out of obligation, but because he wanted to. The reporters smiled, sensing the truth in his words. The interview continued, but the moment had already been made. They were no longer a couple bound by a contract. They were a couple, bound by love. As the night went on, they danced, laughed, and talked like they had never done before. There were no more walls between them, no more masks to hide behind. What they shared was real, and for the first time, Lily allowed herself to believe that this could work. The future was still uncertain. There would be obstacles ahead, moments when they would have to face the judgment of others, but for the first time, they weren't afraid. As they left the gala, hand in hand, the weight of the world seemed lighter. Lucas had made his choice, and now, they were both ready to face whatever came next. There were no more compromises, no more pretending. This was their life now, and they would navigate it together, as partners, as equals, and most importantly, as people who had finally found the love they had both been searching for. The next few months passed with a sense of peace that neither Lily nor Lucas had ever expected. The tension that had once clouded their relationship seemed to melt away, replaced with a deep sense of trust and mutual respect. They no longer had to hide behind their roles or the constraints of a contract. What they had now was real, raw, honest, and unfiltered. They were finally free to be themselves, without fear of judgment or the weight of others' expectations. As Lucas's business continued to thrive, he found that the success he had always worked so hard for felt even more fulfilling now that he had Lily by his side. She had become more than just his fiancée. She was his partner, in every sense of the word. Her creativity and ambition, once hidden behind a mask of uncertainty, had flourished in ways Lucas never could have imagined. She had even started her own art gallery, a dream she had put on hold for so long. With Lucas's support and belief in her, Lily was able to turn that dream into reality. Their lives were no longer defined by the expectations of others. They had built something together, something they could both be proud of. But even with everything they had achieved, there was still one final step they had to take. One evening, as they walked through the park near their home, the soft glow of the setting sun casting a warm light on everything around them, Lucas stopped in his tracks. "Lily," he said, his voice filled with tenderness, "there's something I need to ask you." She turned to face him, her heart suddenly racing. She could see the seriousness in his eyes. "What is it?" she asked, her voice soft with anticipation. Lucas smiled, his expression full of love and admiration. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a simple, elegant diamond ring. "Will you marry me, Lily?" he asked, his voice steady but full of emotion. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this, not in the way it was happening. But standing there, looking at the man who had become her world, she knew the answer without a doubt. "Yes," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, I will marry you." In that moment, everything felt right. All the doubts, all the fears, had led to this one perfect moment. The contract that had once defined their relationship was no longer relevant. What they had now was something far greater, something built on love, trust, and the shared journey they had taken together. As Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger, they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, knowing that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. Their journey had started as a simple arrangement, but it had become so much more. It had become a love story, a real love story. And as they walked hand in hand, ready to begin the next chapter of their lives, they both knew that this was just the beginning of their happily ever after.